Ever feel like you're like walking through a minefield? When it comes to personalities, I mean. Some
Yeah.
people, well, some are more, you know.
Explosive.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not alone. A lot of you have shared concerns about dealing with those difficult people. So we're diving into that with a real expert.
We're looking at some insight from Joe Navarro,
Yeah.
25 years in the FBI, even helped establish their behavioral analysis program.
Wow, 25 years. So this guy, he's seen it all.
Oh, yeah. And this article, it's actually from his book, Dangerous Personalities, which, by the way, has a 100-point checklist in it.
100-point checklist. Okay, so like full deep dive material right there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But just to be clear, Navarro's not saying we should go around, like, diagnosing everyone we meet,
Right, right.
It's more about seeing those patterns, those little red flags, that could mean you're dealing with a personality that might be harmful.
Okay, so less about labeling and more about just being aware. I like it.
Exactly. And he lays out 4 main types: the narcissist, the emotionally unstable, the paranoid, and the predator.
Okay, so not exactly the dream team lineup.
Not quite. Think of them more like warning signs you see on the road, helping you understand the people that you're dealing with.
I like that analogy. So let's break these down a bit. First up, the narcissist. I think we've all met someone like this, right? Like they're always a little too enamored with their own reflection.
Yeah, and what Navarro really hones in on is their lack of real empathy. It goes beyond just being self-centered. It's deeper. Like, imagine you're telling them about something you struggled with, something personal. A narcissist might just jump in and tell you how they had it way worse, but of course they handled it better.
Right, right. It's like their world is a one-way street and everyone else is just hitching a ride.
That's a great way to put it. And forget about it if you don't give them enough praise.
Right.
Or show them enough loyalty.
Oh, absolutely. You're constantly walking on eggshells, trying to guess what they need, how they'll react.
Which actually leads perfectly to our next personality type, the emotionally unstable. I mean, listen, everyone has their ups and downs, right?
Sure.
But with this type, those downs, they can feel like an emotional earthquake.
Yeah, it's like you said, walking on eggshells, you just never know what might set them off.
Exactly. 1 minute, everything's fine, and the next you're caught in this hurricane of emotions.
And at the center of that
A desperate need for attention and a deep, deep fear of being abandoned.
So how do you even start a normal conversation with someone like that? It seems like anything you say could be like twisted around or blown totally out of proportion.
You're right, it's really tough. Navarro really emphasizes that these behaviors, they often come from a place of deep insecurity.
So it's not always them being intentionally malicious.
Not always, no. But that doesn't mean that their behavior doesn't impact those around them. It's important to remember that.
You're absolutely right, it doesn't. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the paranoid personality type. You know the type, always thinking there's something lurking around every corner.
Oh, yeah. And they can hold a grudge. Oh, man, like it's an Olympic sport.
Right.
Every little thing, any betrayal, real or imagined, cataloged, and they do not forget.
It's almost like they're projecting their own insecurities onto the world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like they live in this world of smoke and mirrors where everyone's out to get them. And that can turn into controlling behavior, especially with their families.
And that, I'm guessing, rarely ends well. So last but not least, we've got the predator. This one feels intense.
Yeah, this one's a little different. This type is all about breaking the rules, and they'll exploit anyone to get ahead. What's really scary is that they can be super charming. Like, they draw you in with all this charisma, and then they show their true colors.
Okay, now that is chilling. It's like that classic saying, if it seems too good to be true.
It probably is.
Yeah.
You got it. And Navarro points out one of the biggest red flags is they don't feel bad about it. They might even brag about being ruthless or having a, quote, evil side.
See, now that sounds less like a red flag and more like a giant flashing neon sign, wouldn't you say?
You're telling me.
Yeah.
And even worse, they always think they're justified, like they're above the law, or that their victims deserved it somehow.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got the narcissist, the emotionally unstable, the paranoid, and the predator. That's a lot to unpack. But before we jump into how to actually deal with these personalities, there's something important that Navarro says. It's that a lot of times these toxic behaviors, they start subtle, almost sneaky, and they get worse over time.
Yeah, he uses a powerful example to explain it, the Jonestown tragedy. It's scary to think about, but even extreme behaviors, they can become normal in the wrong environment.
It's like that, what is it, the boiling frog?
Yeah.
You
Yep.
drop a frog in boiling water, it jumps right out, right? But if you heat up the water slowly, it doesn't even realize until it's too late.
It's a perfect analogy because
Yeah.
that's how toxic behavior often works. We ignore the small signs, those gut feelings that something's off, and before you know it, it's become normal, and it's hurting us.
So then trusting your instincts is key here.
Absolutely. If you're feeling uncomfortable, anxious around someone, don't ignore it. That little voice inside, it's trying to tell you something.
And I guess if that voice is speaking up, maybe it's time to get a second opinion.
100%.
Yeah.
Talk to someone you trust, a friend, family. Bouncing your thoughts off someone, it helps you see those red flags more clearly.
It's like a sounding board, right? See if your red flags look like red flags to them too. But let's say you've already noticed some of these traits and you have to deal with this person, a coworker or someone in your family. What then? Because, let's be real, sometimes you can't just cut them off.
No, it's not always that easy. But Navarro does have some strategies for each personality type. Let's take the narcissist, for example. He says it's all about setting those boundaries right from the start. You can't be afraid to stand your ground. Let them know what you will and will not put up with.
Easier said than done, though, right? Especially when you're dealing with someone who's used to getting their way.
Oh, for sure. And that's when things like keeping a record, it can be really helpful. Write down those moments of disrespect, manipulation, anything that crosses the line.
So, like after an encounter, just jot down some notes. Or even send a quick email to yourself, like a reminder.
Exactly. That way, you've got a timeline of events just in case things escalate. And that can be really useful if you need to go to HR, a therapist, or even the police.
That's a good point. Documentation. It's like creating a trail just to keep yourself safe, keep yourself sane. Okay, so then how about dealing with someone who's emotionally unstable? That feels like, I don't know, navigating a minefield in the dark.
It can be really draining. And the thing is, there's no magic solution. Navarro, his advice, it all comes down to self-preservation. Don't engage with their drama. Don't let yourself get sucked into that emotional whirlwind.
Like that saying, don't wrestle with pigs.
Yeah, you both get dirty, but the pig enjoys it. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Don't bother trying to argue when they're all worked up. It's like, oh, it's like talking to a wall during an earthquake. Pointless, and you might get hurt.
So it's all about setting those boundaries, protecting your own energy.
Exactly. And sometimes that means limiting contact, ending a heated conversation, or just flat out saying, this behavior, I'm not okay with it.
Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Seems like that's crucial no matter who you're dealing with.
It really is. And especially with our next type, the paranoid, Navarro, he says the main thing is avoid those head-on arguments. If you challenge their worldview, try to reason with them. So, well, they're just going to get defensive.
So, like, no debating conspiracy theories, no convincing them the world isn't out to get them.
Stay away from it. It's best to just disengage from those talks. Don't feed into that mistrust. And here's the thing. If you ever feel threatened, physically threatened, your safety comes first. Call the authorities. Don't hesitate.
No question about it. Safety first. Okay, so now we get to the predator. If someone's trying to take advantage of you, what can you do to protect yourself? Because honestly, that feels really scary.
It is scary, no doubt. Navarro's advice is pretty straightforward. Keep yourself safe. And if there's any way you can, get away from that person.
And I'm guessing being like extra cautious with your personal information is key, right? Especially like anything financial.
You're reading my mind. Predators, they look for weaknesses. They use manipulation to get what they want. Be very careful with anyone who's moving too fast, especially if they start asking for favors that make you uncomfortable.
But what if you can't get away? What if it's family, a coworker, someone you have to see? That's the tough one, right? When it's like you're stuck. And that other person, that's the problem.
It's a tough spot to be in. And Navarro, he brings up this really, really powerful example, Nicole Brown Simpson. He asks, what if? What if she had gone to the police, right, with a documented list of her ex-husband's behavior, especially, those red flags from his book.
Wow, yeah. It really makes you think about documentation, doesn't it? It's not about like keeping score. It's about showing what's really going on, especially in those abusive situations.
That's it. Even something small, just write it down. It builds that timeline, that pattern. And if you ever need to go to the police, get a restraining order, or even if you're just talking to a therapist, a friend, it shows them what you've been dealing with.
It's about like trusting your own experience.
Right.
Not minimizing it.
Exactly. And remember, nobody, no matter who they are, deserves to be abused or manipulated. Getting help. That takes strength.
And speaking of help, Navarro's book, Dangerous Personalities, it sounds like it has a lot of great advice in it. He even says, bring the checklist to therapy.
Yeah, like having a guide, right,
Yeah.
for those tough conversations helps you make sense of those patterns in your relationships.
So if any of this is hitting home for you, check out that book. As we're wrapping up this deep dive, I keep thinking it's not just about spotting the bad apples. It's about setting those healthy boundaries in all our relationships.
It's about realizing that it's okay to say no, to protect yourself, your own energy. And if someone's bringing you down, making you feel unsafe, you can walk away.
It's a journey, right? Learning about yourself, finding your strength. And when you see those red flags, you're ready. You can build healthier, better relationships because knowledge is power. And don't forget, if you need help, reach out. You are not alone.